get going. All right. Well, good morning, everybody. My name is John McCormick, and I'm on the board of the executive committee of the Lafayette Chamber. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to our bi-monthly, I think, semi-monthly, whatever that is, Coffee with the Mayor, where we have a chance to chat with Mayor of Lafayette, Carl Anduri, and ask some questions and get an update on what's going on in the city. And so we're going to treat this one just like normal. We've actually had, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, quite a few numbers of questions that have been entered beforehand, which is great. Actually, it's always kind of nice to have a good starting point. So, what we're going to be doing is the mayor will give us an update, just kind of a brief overview of what's going on over the last month or two, I guess, since we last met in Lafayette. And then we've got some questions that have been entered that I will ask the mayor, and we'll kind of go back and forth and get those answered. And then we will open it up for questions. And we do want to make sure that the questions, we're going to keep things fairly brief and moving along. And I'll make sure to make sure we keep on task and on topic. But for now, Mayor Anduri, I'd like to turn it over to you to give us a little update on what's going on with the city.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you to the Chamber again for this opportunity to talk about what's happening in the city. I have to say, now that I'm aware of the amount of questions, I may try to filibuster here and my opening remarks, see how much time I can fill. So you might have to rein me in, but we'll see what happens. I'll mention a few of the things that have happened since we last had our coffee. The big one, and I'm sure a number of the questions relate to it, are the housing element discussion that the council had on Monday evening and into Tuesday morning. So most of you are familiar with the general arc, the ups and downs, so not so much an arc, but the heading towards getting an approved housing element, the course that's taken. We submitted our approved housing element in January 31st. We received the comments from HCD at the end of March, and we've been working since then on our submission. At the council meeting, the bottom line is that the council authorized staff to make the changes that we requested at the meeting and to post the revised housing element for the required 7-day comment period and then submit it to HCD. We hope that HCD will get back to us sooner than the 60 days that they're allowed to comment on it. We hope that they do that. We will respectfully request that we get it back so that we have time to do the rezoning, so we can complete our rezoning by January 31st. Rezoning requires at least one meeting at the Planning Commission and then 2 meetings of the City Council. So it's going to be very, very tight. Now, in terms of what was discussed on Monday night, there were 4 main issues that the council visited and revisited. The first, when we submitted the housing element in January 31st, we had enough opportunity sites and opportunity sites to meet our 2,114 RHNA plus a buffer. Over the course of the months since then, with the HCD comments and watching what they've been doing with other cities, which has been then an experience. All cities are watching what they're doing with other cities and knowing what's going to happen to them. We had to reduce some of the units we had in there with ADUs. We went in with a realistic capacity percentage of 90 or 95. 95 if it was residential, 90 if it was a mixed use development. It became pretty clear that we wouldn't be able to do anything more than 88. So that knocked off a number of units that we had, and then several opportunity sites based on the way that HCD was viewing them in other cities. We realized that we would not be able to get credit for them, and that knocked off a number of other units. So we had to find units. So the first item that we discussed on Monday was whether to include, whether to upzone faith-based organization-owned properties. Since we filed our housing element, SB 4 passed, and it was signed by the governor either last month or earlier this month. So we know that SB 4 is in effect. SB 4 provides an overlay district for both faith-based organizations and educational institutions, and allows them to, without complying with CEQA, to have up to 30 units per acre residential development on their properties. And basically, the city has no control over that. With that going into law, we decided that we wanted, and if that by itself would not allow us to count those sites as opportunity sites. The only way we do that is if we were to upzone. So that's why we decided to do that. We can discuss what difference that is, what impact that has on neighborhoods. This SB 4 provides for 30 units per acre. The upzoning is 35. The SB 4, you don't have to comply with CEQA. Under the city's upzoning, you would have to comply with CEQA, with the environmental regulations. So that decision was made on a 5-0 vote. The next element we discussed was whether to include the De Silva property in the opportunity sites. The De Silva property is that 60 acres that's across the road from Oakwood. That was the GPAC had originally recommended including the Silva property as an opportunity site by a 6-5 vote. When it went to the Planning Commission, the Planning Commission took De Silva out. When the council submitted our approved element in January, De Silva was not there. In each of the discussions since January, when we've discussed or considered De Silva, we decided not to include it. But we discussed it again at this meeting, and while a formal vote wasn't taken, there were 3 council members who did not want to include it, and 2 who did. So as one of the council members who voted not to include it, let me just say that not all decisions that council members make are slam dunk decisions where you go in and you know, yes, this is the way it should be. There are decisions that we make that each of us personally find very difficult and are very, very close decisions. And this one for me was a very close decision. But the reason that I wanted to keep it out was that looking at the overall development in Lafayette, putting a large development, which would be 300 or so units at one end of town, where all the residents would have to most likely have multiple cars in order to run their errands, commute, get to BART, that it's better urban planning to put that in the downtown, where there at least be a chance that the households could get by with just one car. So put it another way, if you've got a new 300 or so unit at one end of town, you're going to have 500, 600 car trips into the downtown from that unit. And so better to have them where at least there's a chance that they can walk to school, walk to commerce. Second, our existing general plan calls for us to keep large developments away from the entrances to the city. It's part of the semi-rural aspect. I realize that we will have a large development on the east side of town, but I prefer if we didn't on the west. Another element is that this is the last large parcel in Lafayette that provides the opportunity for playing fields, for multiple playing fields. And I know one of the considerations for those who supported including it was that we could potentially get a playing field. But the word potentially is very important there, because if we were to upzone, we would lose a lot of the leverage that we might otherwise have in getting a playing field. In other words, if we upzoned, the developer could develop the parcel. There's no requirement that a playing field be used as well. And then there's the element that this property is in a very high fire severity zone. We had taken those out of the environmental impact report. What we were told at the meeting is we would not need to recirculate the EIR, but that it would take staff more time to adjust the language in our submission, particularly with reference to affirmatively furthering fair housing and explaining why we were putting this development at that end of town. So given where we are in terms of trying to avoid the builder's remedy, that was just another factor. So difficult decision. We made it. We're moving forward. Then we discussed downtown zoning. And we did make some tweaks in the zoning. I think the best way to summarize it is we are not upzoning. If you start at Dolores on the north side of Mount Diablo Boulevard, if you start at Dolores and you go all the way down to 2nd Street, the properties that front Mount Diablo Boulevard will not be upzoned. They'll stay exactly as they are now at 35 units per acre. On the south side of Mount Diablo Boulevard, starting across from Dolores at Mountain View, go all the way from Mountain View to Pleasant Hill Road, the entire length, and it stays the same at 35 per unit. So there's no upzoning along the core downtown in Mount Diablo Boulevard. The upzoning takes place on the north side, between the freeway and the strip that is 35. That will be upzoned to 75 units per acre. And then on the west end, west of Dolores, along Mount Diablo Boulevard, it'll go to 50 units per acre on both sides of Mount Diablo Boulevard. So that's basically the zoning. The tweak that we made last night was to make sure that from Dolores to 2nd Street, it's all 35 per acre. And then the fourth thing that we considered, and this is in character with what's happened with the housing element. There was a new element introduced at the meeting. It's not even in the staff report. It was introduced at the meeting, and that was the recommendation that we adopt a minimum density of 88% for multifamily housing, for the zoning and for our zoning. And the reason for that is that we've seen recently in, again, how HCD is dealing with other cities, that they're being very stringent on the realistic capacity. And again, the realistic capacity, if a property is zoned at 50 units per acre, if we say, well, we can put 50 units on that property, then that's 100% capacity. So if we make that an opportunity site, we get 50 units. If the realistic capacity is 88%, we get 44 units. We were concerned seeing what was happening with other cities. For example, Orinda went in with the 60% realistic capacity. San Ramon was, I believe, a 75% realistic capacity. If we had gone in with 88 and HCD said, no, that's just not going to work, number one, we would be way beyond our January 31st deadline for rezoning. And we would have to revisit again everything about what other properties are we going to upzone in order to hit our number on the RENA units. But if we have a minimum density of 88% minimum density, that takes away that argument, and we don't have to go back and forth with HCD on it. But the problem is, well, that solves that problem. There's, I think, a number of unintended consequences of that are, some of them were discussed at the meeting, and I think we'll realize others as we go along. But the council did agree with that 88% minimum density. All council members agreed to do that, so we're moving forward with that as well. So that's where we are. We hope within a few days to be able to submit to HCD, and then we'll just hope and use whatever influence we can to get them to act on it quickly. So that's the first big item. Okay, a number of other quicker items. Second, I just want everyone to be aware that, and I see if she's on here, I can't see who all is on the call, but at the council meeting Monday, we also, we recognized Beth Needel for her 10 years serving as executive director of the Lafayette Library and Learning Center Foundation. She is retiring, and her last day is going to be November 4th, which is the day at the library. So please mark your calendars for November 4th from 12 to 3 p.m. Drop by the library, take part in the Day at the Library events, and say thank you to Beth for all she's done for our community. Next is the EBMUD Tower. Our local experts had asked EBMUD to look at a solution. They have asked their technical advisors to look at it. It's taking far longer than we expected. We still haven't heard back. So we'll hope that we get a good answer from them when they do get back to us. Next item, I don't think it was the last council meeting, but the council asked Tracy Robinson to move forward with a resolution on parking meter rates. The city has had $1 an hour rate since 2006, and the private lots, as you know, are $2 per hour. So the council voted to increase it. Part of the reason, or the main reason, is that we're running a deficit in our parking fund. There are a number of issues involved with that, though, so it may be a while before the resolution comes back, because there are several things that Tracy's looking at, including the hours that we'd be observing and the days that we'd have it. So that is underway. Also want to make you aware, the cancer support community, which has the property between the Reservoir and the De Silva property, bordered by the Reservoir, De Silva property, and Mount Diablo Boulevard, their fundraising has been successful. They had a target of 25 million. They've reached 20 million. So I understand they're planning to break ground next summer. So we'll have that facility in our community, serving the entire Bay Area. They still, the 25 million target, they've got 20 million, but they have a 5 million matching grant. So they will be raising that additional, 5 plus the match, $10 million over the next few months. But just want you to be aware that that will be happening at that site. And then at the council meeting, not this council meeting, but previous one, we did approve a land acknowledgement for Lafayette. There's a task force that studied that for months and made a recommendation. Task force was headed by Mr. McCormick. and they're Janet Thomas, Mary McCosker, Steve Calgeris with the other members. That's been adopted. I think you're all familiar with the utility boxes that are wrapped with Lafayette history themes. There's 7 of them along Mount Diablo Boulevard. The one that's at the corner of Mount Diablo Boulevard and Lafayette Circle, the western leg of Lafayette Circle, has an Indigenous people theme. We will change that wrap so it'll still be honoring the Bay Miwok people, but on one side of the utility box, it'll have the land acknowledgement statement. So that should happen within the next 2 months. And then the council did adopt a ban on gas-powered leaf blowers, which will go into effect July 1st of next year. So we moved the effective date so people will have a chance to become aware of it and to prepare for it. And then just to update on our Slow Down Lafayette campaign, I'll just say that one of our traffic officers completed motor school as of early September. So as of early September, we've had 2 motorcycle officers on duty. Purely by coincidence, during September, our number of traffic citations went up 81%. So I just put that out there as a point of information. We are encouraging everyone to observe the speed limit. We hope that that will become a strongly entrenched community value in Lafayette to observe the speed limit. And yes, there will be enforcement. So that's my update.
Great. No, thank you, Mayor. A lot going on in Lafayette, not surprisingly. So as I mentioned, I also, if you haven't already, for all of those on the Zoom, if you open up the meeting chat, Suzanne and Holly does as well, putting in some good supplementary links to things if you want to kind of go do a deeper dive into some of the things that Carl has mentioned, which is really helpful as well. So as I mentioned, we had quite a few questions come in before this, and so I'm just going to go through. Carl and I will talk about those, and then we'll open up for general questions. The first one, Mayor, that came in, which is, obviously a little more, this is going to be a little more international than our typical things that we deal with the city council. But the question is, could or should the city council issue a resolution supporting Israel? Because we have done prior resolutions like with Ukraine or Black Lives Matter. And it's a fair question.
Yeah, and just a preliminary on the credit, I saw the original question as it came in. Just so we're clear on it, there was not a resolution on Ukraine. We did ask the city staff to fly the Ukraine flag for a month, and we did that at the beginning of the Russian invasion to show support. When it looked like there was not going to be a Ukraine much longer. So fortunately, that situation the worst did not happen in that situation, but just there wasn't a resolution, and there's never been a resolution that mentions Black Lives Matter. So I've gone through the resolutions, and just to be clear, but yes. As I mentioned at the council meeting, the council had received an email from the American Jewish Committee with suggested language for a resolution. An hour later, we received another email from the JCRC, which holds itself out as the representative of the largest portion of the Jewish community in the Bay Area, basically recommending that communities not adopt resolutions, but so the council has not done that. But do I personally condemn the Hamas terrorist attack on Israel on October 7th? Yes, of course. Along with, I'm sure, everyone on this call, I was shocked, outraged, angry, saddened, repulsed by the attacks and by the taking of hostages. There's really no justification for these barbaric acts. I'm sure all of us, I certainly grieve for the victims and with the families of the victims. I grieve with all innocent Israeli and Palestinian victims of violence in the region. I know that there are residents of our community who have loved ones in harm's way, and I hold them in my thoughts. I know that there are members of our community who are concerned for their own safety and are concerned by a potential rise in hate. And I want to restate what I believe to be the fundamental common values of our community. Each member of our community is a full valued member of our community. Each member of our community has the full support of our community. Any expression of hatred towards any member of our community is an affront to all of us, and we will do all do our part to confront hate in whatever form it appears. I think the council's concern is the impact on our community, and that's what I'll say at this point.
All right. Very good. No, well spoken. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Getting to a little more local issues after that one. There was a question that I've actually had directed me a couple of times, which is the status of the Campana building, the parking lot and the building in particular. Is the building coming down? Can we use the parking lot? I'm wondering if you can give everybody an update on that.
Yeah, this has not turned out to be as easy as I had thought it was going to be. We have entered into a contract now to do a hazardous material survey on the building. There are two buildings on that property, as you're aware. There's the wooden building, and then there's the building that's to the right of the property. The wooden building, we're having a hazard material survey completed, and then once we get that, we'll be getting bids from demolition companies so that we have just a more informative of how much it would cost to demolish the property. And then there's also some issues with utilities on the property, because it turns out the utilities for the second building go through the wooden building, and we have to work that out. So we're considering whether we should demolish the property and turn the entire lot into a parking lot. That's what we're looking at, and it's just turning out to be a little more difficult, a little more complicated than we had thought. So stay tuned as we work through that.
Sounds good. I mean, obviously having a parking lot downtown right there will be phenomenal when it's all said and done. But great, thank you. Another question that came in, and this is interesting. I think over the last couple of weeks, it's really spun up about a potential farmers market. I don't know if you've heard about the kind of the initiative that's being kind of circulated, or some of the ideas around that.
No, I had not heard anything about this. I'm very interested in it, though, because I like farmers markets. So, but all I can say, since I don't have any information, is that we have had farmers markets in the past. One was on city property, and there was an agreement with the city that was approved by the council. So I think the only thing I can say to people who are doing that is just please start with the city planning department and talk to them about what might be required. That's all I can say about that now, because I'm really not tuned into what's being proposed or who's behind it.
Great. Well, I think that's good advice. We should do that, because no, I think you're right. Everybody loves, and something else that brings people downtown is always good. And so having a farmers market that's well run and well attended, there, great. And I know, matter of fact, actually, we're going to go ahead. I was going to hold the questions, but I know Julie Del Santo has been involved, and I'll just let her do a quick comment, and then we'll go back to our questions that were entered before. Yeah, Julie. You have to take yourself off mute, though. No, Julie. All right. Well, anyway, we'll keep going, but we'll get Julie in later. All right. Next question. There was a question that came in about, and I think we've had this question before in various forms. But
Sorry.
Julie, are you there? Okay.
Yes, I apologize. I was not my, you would think I'd know Zoom by now. Thank you. Sorry, not to comment in the midst of a good meeting, and thank you for all you guys do. And thank you for all your comments supporting all people everywhere, regardless of background and culture. So thank you. In terms of farmers market, the only thing I wanted to do is we didn't want to inundate you with, 20 plus La Marinda or Lafayette moms coming on the call. So I'm kind of speaking on behalf of them. There's quite a large group of us who really would love to see farmers market back. And in brainstorming with the chamber, something that came up, so I just wanted to put it out there. Obviously, if BART was not an option, knowing that the city of Lafayette owns the parking lot below Uncle U's, and we know a lot of the farmers markets are obviously they're on Thursdays in Orinda. I think they're Thursdays. There's Saturdays or Saturdays in Moraga. So it's finding a day that is not, well, everyone's already at a place. We're good. All these lovely locals are good with a Wednesday evening, 4 to 7. And we were thinking that would be a prime location for just a quaint, small, it would bring additional foot traffic on a Wednesday night right to the center of town with the Uncle U's parking lot, and should in time be, and bring more local vendors in, and should in time it need to grow. I am familiar with a partnership group who owns the parking lots to the right and left of that city parking lot. If there needed to be overflow, I could probably have quite a voice and a say into that if it wanted to be if it grew into something bigger. I don't know if it would or will, but if you started with the Uncle U's parking lot, which is substantial space, we already ran the math based on the old parking rates or current parking rates, but we ran the math, and I don't know how many, we don't think the parking lot would ever be extremely full, but we ran the math as if it were extremely full. And financially, it was a nominal amount you would lose each week. I mean, it was like $100. I'm sure there's a group of people who would pay that to offset the parking for those few hours, but we would love to see it downtown. We think that's a prime location. And if someone said it's not big enough, we think it is, but if it needed to be bigger, actually the smaller it is, the more people it will look like it's always busy. But if it did need overflow, we do know parking locations to the right and left that we could probably have some influence on if needed to expand. So very, very, very much in favor. And so many other people are, and we were going to sign a petition. We didn't know what to do, but thank you, Chamber, for suggesting we pop in today.
Yeah, and again, please reach out to Greg Wolf in the planning department and discuss it. I'm not familiar with the details of that parking lot, but I think there may be some obligated spaces in that parking lot. So I think the best thing to do is to go to planning. Okay,
and would I have permission in that email to say, after speaking at this meeting, there seemed to be, I'm not going to say everyone's in favor, but there seemed to be additional interest in at least pursuing it. Is that a fair statement? We don't know if it will work.
Sounds fair to me.
There we go. Well, then with that, thanks for all you do. And you all have a good weekend.
Great.
Thank you, Julie. No, farmers markets would just be terrific. And I think something downtown versus tucked back there on the BART lot has got a potential. Yeah. Moving on to the next one, which is, as I said, one that we've heard before, about the process for having a food truck, especially on the East End, which is a little more, not quite the restaurant, obviously, density that we have in the middle of town. And there is a question: do you know, or can you provide direction on if somebody wanted to host a food truck on the East End? What's required to have that happen?
Okay, and I assume we're talking in addition to normal health department permits. We'll assume those are all in place. But if someone uses a parking space and observes the requirements for that parking space, then they can do it there. If it's on private property and doesn't impede parking and circulation, then that's okay as well. But again, if someone wants to just be absolutely confirm that, again, stop at the planning department would be recommended. Okay,
that's fair enough. I feel like we had a food truck question, like every other meeting. It's always a popular topic. There's a question fairly broad, but I'll just go ahead and bring it up because, as we know, I think we have which is terrific. Lots of new storefronts opening up along Mount Diablo Boulevard. Certainly along the we have the area next to the Zahara's and the whole there along Mount Diablo next uncle use and so on. And I guess there's a question about employee parking and what the different options are for not obviously taking parking spaces away from shoppers. There's any comments on that?
Well, no, the city itself does not have parking. So I think, and when a storefront goes in, employee parking is considered part of the parking requirement. But if the retail unit wants the employees to park somewhere, they worked it out, whether with like the AT&T lot, with some of the private parking lots in the area, but the city does not have parking lots that it can make arrangements for. So I think the best thing would be to consult with the chamber, because I believe that the chamber, you're aware of the businesses now that have arrangements with other businesses for parking.
Yes, as a matter of fact, I know at our Lumber and Music, we have employees that park in a lot that we contract with. So yeah, I think every business owner has to kind of, unfortunately, has to be part of the equation. We're just, we're as we have more businesses coming into and fewer empty storefronts along Mount Diablo, it's one of those good problems to have, but still a real problem. So I think the chamber can certainly help out with giving some alternatives to that. Great. Next question, and we're a little bit all over, but this is actually, I was curious as well. I've been reading, and there's been a lot of cities around the Bay Area that have been shutting down or limiting Zoom access for city council meetings and so on because of Zoom bombing or inappropriate comments being made during public comment sections. Ironically, we're on Zoom now talking about it. I understand there were a couple of pretty unfortunate comments at the last city council meeting. The question came in, is there anything that's going to happen, or is the city going to take any action, based upon that?
It's on the agenda for the next council meeting. Yes, we've been very fortunate. It hadn't happened to us, but it did happen at the Monday night council meeting. And it happened at a very unfortunate time when we were taking public comments in honoring Beth. So it was just very, very unfortunate. I just don't understand why some people, it's terrible. The only they were calling in during not general public comment, but public comment on specific items, so we were able to cut them off because they weren't on topic.
Right.
What I'll do at the beginning of the next council meeting, because we'll have public comment at the beginning of the meeting, but before we open it for public comment, I will explain that there may be people calling in. While what they say will almost certainly not, what was said last time was not remotely aligned with our community values. We are all support the First Amendment, and unless it's an incitement to violence, we need to hear them out for their 3 minutes. You may have been wondering why in the last few council meetings I've been cutting off people pretty closely at 3 minutes, because we were concerned that this was going to be happening. If it happens, we want to be able to end whatever it is at 3 minutes. But I'll tell people who are in the hall, if they don't have to listen to it, they can leave, go out. If somebody's listening to it on Zoom, you can mute. The council does have to sit there and listen to it. That's any speaker's First Amendment right. If they call in again, not during the general comment period, but during a specific item and they're off topic, we'll cut them off again as soon as we can. But we will consider whether we allow any public comment by Zoom. I know the school district does not allow public comments over Zoom. So we might go to that. I would really like to keep the system we have now, because I know there are people who find it difficult to come down to speak in person. It's just we've gone to fairly great lengths to allow for virtual participation, and it does allow more people to participate, and I'd like to continue that. But if people have views on that, please write to the council in advance of the meeting, and we will be discussing it at the next meeting.
Great, thank you. I know it's a problem. Many cities in the just in the East Bay are dealing with. So it's a challenge. It's a challenge. So thank you for your thoughtful response on that one. Matt Pease had a question, which I think is I don't want to spend too much time on it because I think we've already spent a lot on the housing element. But has the thinking about how we make a stronger, given the new density issues in downtown, what we can do with the city to have a stronger commercial retail environment, what can we do together, and so on. And I don't know if you have any thoughts on Matt's question that kind of came in.
Yeah, well, the upside is if we, with greater density, are going to become more consumers. So it's definitely going to be a livelier downtown area with more people available for restaurants, for shops. But I think this falls in the category of this whole housing element cycle has, we're focusing on getting our housing element approved. But as soon as we get it approved, I think we need to start thinking about the next cycle. So there's some questions we immediately need to address. One of the questions is the question Matt raised, but we can't wait till the next 8-year cycle to start thinking about what we need to do to try to get some awareness, of the situation that Lafayette's in with the high fire hazard issue. I mean, there's just a number of things. The Attorney General's guidance, which came in the middle of our process and changed the course of our process. That guidance was written it might apply to 80% of the communities in California, but it didn't apply to Lafayette. And I don't imagine that when the guidance was being prepared, anyone had in mind a community like Lafayette or Orinda when they did it. So I think we need to start from day one, trying to figure out what we can do to make people aware, to impact the whole arena process, the allocation process. But beyond that, in the Attorney General's office, the governor's office, recognizing and of course, every community thinks they're unique, but we really are in terms of our situation. So that we are not faced with the situation that we had this time. And we need to start talking. We are talking with BART, but we need to keep that, not put that discussion on hold, but keep talking about what we do with the lots. We don't want to get in a situation again where we come to the end of the period and we're faced with decisions that we really don't want to make. I think when we do the final vote on the housing element, I don't think anyone is getting the housing element that they want, but it's the housing element we have to have.
Agreed. Thank you. All right. A couple of other questions on traffic related, actually. I think there's a question about that new traffic light going on up on the east end at Mount Diablo Court and what the status is of that and when will that be turned on. It feels like it's been kind of in this 90% completion state for quite a while.
Okay, the short answer, PG&E will energize the light on November 13th. The city will activate it on November 14th.
Wow. There we go.
Unless something goes wrong in the meantime. I know exactly what people are thinking about this. Why? I'm not going to get into it. Let's just say that on November 14th, the light will be working.
Good. But I do understand it's a traffic actuated light, so it actually won't be on unless there's cross traffic coming in. So I think it won't be. Hopefully, will not affect through traffic very often. There was also the chamber's gotten a question or two. There was about changing Lafayette Circle traffic directions from a 2-way to a 1-way. I know there is always some concern about how narrow it is through some of those parts of by tutus and so on. But I don't know if you have any comments or updates on that.
Yeah, I think I know where that came from. The city council subcommittee to recommend on what's to be done with the American Rescue Plan Act funds was me and Vice Mayor Dawson. And at one point we were on site in that area with Thomas Myers, our development person on contract, and then Sudesh, who is our consultant for thinking, what more could we do for outdoor dining? And we were brainstorming about, what could be done. So, one suggestion was to basically create a park between the entrance to the parking lot on the east and the entrance to the parking lot farther to the south, in between tutus. And, we were just brainstorming about things that might be done, hanging flower pots, and then the one-way road was one of those things. So I think the way the question came in was, is that something the city is looking at? The answer is no, it's not on the agenda to make that a one-way road.
Okay, that's I guess there's definitely pros and cons to that one. That makes sense. The another question that came in, it feels like the Plaza Park is in use a lot, which is great. A lot of fun, a lot of great community activities going on there. And there was a question, which, I mean, there's probably a resource, but there's a question: how does one go about reserving use of the Plaza Park?
Yeah, well, it's a public park. If somebody wants to use it for a birthday party, a picnic, you just come use the park. It's first come, first served. You can't have amplified music or lights or anything that digs into the turf that would disturb the turf, but people are welcome to come use it. If there's a more organized event, then the way to start is with Joanne Robbins, our city clerk. Talk to her about using it. But generally, it's only used for city purposes or in conjunction with the city. I mean, those are the times when it's reserved for use. Otherwise, it's open, first come, first served.
Great. All right, thank you. That makes sense. There was a question that came in from Dave Clark about the faith-based organizations and the zoning. I know you mentioned that in your update. I don't know if there's anything else that you wanted to address on that, if there's any kind of longer term implications. I mean, the law is relatively recent, so I know we haven't had a chance to probably think about that too much, but if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, David, probably will, was asking, are we concerned that the state might upzone around those areas, since they're upzoning the faith-based organization and educational own parcels? And I guess the only thing I can say, who knows what the state is going to do? The fact that we would upzone the parcel is not going to make a difference as opposed to going under SB4. So that's just not something that we can predict. And I don't think we've put ourselves in any worse position through our proposed upzoning.
Great, thank you. All right, excellent. Well, those were the questions that were asked beforehand. We're going to turn over just for a few minutes for questions from the audience. I want to not have as many don't want to get into a housing discussion. I know there's been multiple conversations about that. I'd really like to open up for questions not dealing with the housing element, if we could, for our remaining few minutes, if there are any questions for the mayor. But thank you very much for the questions that you did answer so far, Mayor Anduri. I appreciate it. But so I'm opening up for if there are any questions from the folks on the call that we'd like to go in there. Jenna, yes.
John, thank you. And Mayor Anduri, I'm only saying this because everybody, I think, on this call is interested in hearing this. The Park Theater Trust received a $100,000 donation from PG&E, and it's moving us forward. And thank you all for your support of what we're doing for our community. No question.
Thank you, Jenna. No, very exciting. Nice to have PG&E give us some money back for a change, right? It was very nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just can't help but say, you think about what will revitalize our downtown, and it's partly coming down to Matt's question. Renovating, opening the Park Theater would be just such a jolt of energy for our downtown. So I hope everyone gets behind that.
And
Hey,
if you're
John.
reading tonight, be sure and come by the theater and get popcorn.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you. Any other questions for the mayor? We have a couple minutes left. We had quite a wide-ranging set, but are there any other questions?
How can we ask questions?
Yeah, Michael.
Sorry, quick question. Given that the fire chief in November 2021 said that he could only service 35-foot tall buildings, what are we going to do to cover the 10-year gap to produce a fire truck building in Lafayette, given that we're going to produce buildings that are going to be more than twice that size?
Yeah, and that's another one of the questions that need to start on day one pursuing. Yeah,
right.
It's been out there for 2 years, Mayor, and nothing's been done. And yet we are now proposing building very high buildings that are more than twice the size of the fire chief or deputy fire chief said he can service. If we're in a high fire area as a city, shouldn't that be a priority, number one, for the city?
Yeah, I'm not saying that that's not a priority. It obviously is. It's something we have to work on.
But why hasn't it been worked on in the last 2 years?
And well, I'd love to jump in if you don't mind, Mayor. This is certainly something that Confire is looking at. And as most of you are aware, we're looking at ultimately relocating Fire Station 15 so that we can accommodate taller apparatus. But Confire does not want to weigh into your planning matters, and we will respond and make sure that we can respond appropriately should there be an emergency.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Yes.
David, you have your hand up. Is this following up on the David Clark? You have a question or follow up to your original?
How does David get 2 squares here?
He does. Well, only one of them is answered, but all right. Well, if I don't hear from David, are there any other questions for the mayor?
I have a question.
Yes, Stella.
Hi, sorry. Let me just get myself. So I have a question. So you explained previously why the council pivoted from a downtown focus for the housing allocation and agreed to upzone churches in neighborhoods miles away from downtown. And that is that SB4 may have provided the city the possibility to take credit for the SB4 generated unit or potential SB4 generated units in the RENA unit counts. So what's the city's plan if HCD rejects the city's upzoning as duplicative of SB4 and really not a legitimate action? Where will you find those 300 units?
Yeah, those discussions are going on. We will need to be prepared.
Okay, so I mean, I guess, are you developing a plan? Do you anticipate developing the plan concurrently, like now and then after you submit the element?
I'm not sure that would be productive to have a public process on that right now when we're dealing with HCD.
Oh, okay, I meant like an internal process just to kind of get ready to
Yes.
at some point. Because if HCD does reject, then the builder's remedy will already be a possibility, a liability, and then to actually go through the time to get organized, to bring where do we find the extra units to the public, that whole process will be very lengthy, I imagine.
Yep, we're aware of that.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you, appreciate it.
Yep.
Thank you, Stella. All right, so I want to wrap it up. If there are any questions that don't have to do with housing, we can take those from the business perspective. Otherwise, I do want to wrap it up because we have another thing. So, David, you have a question that doesn't have to do with housing?
It looks like I'm David now.
Well, that's what it says on the thing.
I'm Robert Lavoie. I don't know how my David.
Oh, right, I don't know. So, yeah, so I do want to wrap it up. I don't want to talk about that. If you have a question that doesn't have to do with housing, I'm all for it.
I was going to ask about the affirmatively fair housing benchmark using Contra Costa County for Lafayette rather than picking something that was more relevant.
All right, well, I'm gonna take that offline because we're wrapping up, and I think we've spent a lot of time with the housing. So, great. So I see we have just maybe, I appreciate you did have your comment in the I saw your comment in the
This
Okay,
is a real quick question. Are you going to write a cover letter, a strong cover letter like the city of Hayward did? I know you don't like my questions.
No, who said that? The city of Hayward wrote their letter on their 6th submission. So we hope we don't get to a 6th submission.
Fair enough. All right. Thank you, Libby. Oh, great. All right. Thank you very much, Mayor. I want to thank it's right hitting 9 o'clock. Terrific, wide-ranging conversation. Lots of hard questions the city is dealing with. So I do appreciate that. I want to turn over to Holly for the last couple minutes to talk about what's coming up, because the chamber, we're doing a lot of things over the next couple months. So Holly, you want to let us know what's going on?
Absolutely. We've been super busy. I just want to say thank you to everyone that came to shop and explore Lafayette for the Lafayette Art and Wine Festival. We had an absolutely amazing weekend with weather and our community coming out. Thank you to all the volunteers and organizations that helped. This past Sunday, we had another great community event called the Lafayette Res Run for Education, and that included a rainbow. So again, we thank for the wonderful weather and the community come out to support our downtown and in the Res Run to support our schools. For those of us who are 9 and under and like to dress in costumes, today is Trick or Treat Street. Our local businesses are going to be open and welcoming our youngest residents and future entrepreneurs and business owners to Lafayette for a Trick or Treat Street. It's today from 4 to 6. Please note that we are closing off the parking meters along Mount Diablo from Moraga Road to Dewing Avenue in an attempt to make it a very safe experience for our little ones. So that is a little bit of a change today. The parking will be closed from 3 to 7, just the street parking that's adjacent to the sidewalks where our little ones will be walking. Our next very special community event is called the Community Thanksgiving Breakfast, and we'll have special speakers, co-presidents of the Los Trompes that will present to us and basically send us off into the holiday season. So our Community Thanksgiving Breakfast will be Thursday morning. I know you guys can attend because it's at 7 a.m. and you'd like to get up early to attend community events like this one. Thursday morning, November 16th. And then Santa will come to town and we'll have our holiday celebration on Sunday, December 3rd. The lights in the medians that are sponsored by the city, Brana Development, the Dana Green team, and the chamber will go on in just a few weeks as well. So we're making the holidays bright. And of course, we encourage everyone to shop our local businesses for those unique gifts and to support our local community members this holiday season. So if anyone has any questions about any of our events or things that the chamber is doing, please feel free to reach out to us. And special thank you to Carl for this whole year of Coffee with the Mayor and all the events that you've participated in and all the ribbon cuttings, very special for our businesses. So thank you so much, Carl. And thank you, John, for being our moderator. We put a lot of work into this coffee because we had a lot of questions this year, this time. So thank you, John, for coordinating and putting it all together.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you very much, Holly, for everything that you and the chamber do. So we look forward to seeing everybody at the Trick or Treat Street, the community breakfast, and It's Wonderful Life. All right, great. Have a great Friday and a great weekend, everybody. Take care.